I've got a wonderful new project coming for happy quilty people. I can't wait to tell you about it. My fabric is here, so I can go ahead and get started. I'm going to tell you about the book, the fabrics, the challenge, and then I'm going to let you see how I'm starting planning my quilt by going ahead and laying it out, choosing my colors, and I'm going to divide them up between my 100 blocks, and I'm going to show you the organization for that. It's really quite simple once you kind of see the method in practice. My in-person sewing group is doing 100 blocks in 100 days as a challenge. I picked Tula Pink's 100 Modern Quilt Blocks as the program, the book, the pattern that I'm doing for 100 different quilt blocks. Now, for our group's challenge, 100 blocks in 100 days, it doesn't have to be 100 different blocks, but this book is. We're going to talk about fabrics, the 3 ways that you can choose colors for your quilt. There's different layouts in the book, so you can have lots of options there. We're going to talk about how to make this quilt with what you've already got. Now, please know, this is not a stash busting kind of a project. I really don't like that term. I think it is valuable for you to have a stash, right? No one would ever be upset with a painter for buying another tube of a color of paint that they thought was great and would work great for their artistry, right? So as quilters, I know that's like an easy thing probably for magazine editors to do, is to say this is a stash buster. Be proud of the stash you have. Having a stash is going to help you out in this instance. And it's also going to show you a lot about what colors you like if you've collected colors kind of on your own. It may also show you that if you've kind of acquired some extra fabrics, maybe you bought something at an estate sale or you got something in a bundle, it's going to show you what colors you're just kind of like, ooh, ick, I don't like that one. Anyway, let me tell you about the book. 100 Modern Quilt Blocks. This is the format. Each 2-page spread has the picture of the actual quilted block. The blocks are going to end up at 6.5 inches. And then it's just got a diagram of how you're going to put your pieces together. There's 2 fabrics in this particular block, and then it tells you what your cutting instructions are. As I lead you through this book, I'm not going to talk to you about what the sizes are, because I want to honor Tula Pink's pattern instruction in the book and her measurements. All right, there are some instructions when you get to half square triangles, when you get to flying geese, to tell you how to do those. I've got a video on doing flying geese at a 4 at a time method, but for the purposes of this book, we don't know what finish size they're supposed to be within the block. Let me see if I can find one. So like there's a flying geese unit, but you really don't know what that finish size is exactly supposed to be. So I'm just going to recommend doing them 1 at a time for your blocks here. You'll notice as I flip these pages that these blocks usually have a solid fabric, 1 or 2, and a print fabric, 1 or 2. 5 is the most colors that I've seen in any one block. Many of them have 3. So there's the solid and then 2 prints that just play nicely with it. It's not that they're terribly different, but they're just different enough to be elegant color-wise, to create some difference. But think about this block. It reads as yellow from a distance, right? All right, so this quilt is going to be a color wash. I have lots of prints in my fabric stash and not many solids at all. And so when I started looking at her blocks, in these blocks, her prints and her solids play really nicely together. And I thought, okay, I need to do that, but I don't want to go to the store and buy 100 million new fat quarters of solids. The cheapest option, maybe the way to do that, if you want to build your solid stash, is you could go to Hobby Lobby and buy Kona Fabrics solids. I would recommend though that you look at the better quality solids at a quilt store. If you've never been to a quilt store, go and look. But I'm going to show you what I found. So initially, I feel like I need a book stand. Initially, I was thinking these are small blocks. I bet that if I just had a 5-inch charm square, I bet that could get me pretty far in this 6.5-inch block. I decided it's not going to, and I've ordered a layer cake so I can have 10-inch pieces to work with. But I'd already ordered the 5 inches, so let me show you what I got. This is a Ruby Plus B charm pack. Every single fabric in there is a different color, and there are, how many? Oh, there are 105 colors in this pack. So great pack. Love it. If you're looking for just a lot of solids that you can add in if you have mostly prints, great option here. But the other fabric pack I found, again, at the Organic Fabric Company. They've put their card on the back, so I have a clue. As I was thinking about adding solids, one piece of advice I'd heard about putting colors together for quilts is that if you see a flat, a dull, a dead place in your quilt layout when you get your blocks laid out, it could be because you have a lot of prints and the dull spot is just a solid. I'm not saying that's a rule. I'm saying in the design of your quilt, that could be. So I got kind of concerned about my solids, and I kept kind of like thinking about that little tidbit of advice and thinking, well, what could I do? And I thought about something that I found at Market that was wonderful. So at Market, I found Hand Loom by Tara Fonin for Wyndham Fabrics. Let me show you their little brochure from Market. All of these beautiful colored quilts. I videoed in their booth, they allowed me to, all of these beautiful bright colors of quilts. Oh my goodness, they're so scrumptious. I loved the fabric. It's a woven, like a shot cotton. It's got texture to it. I mean, come on, how fun is that one? Here's a range of colors, so you can see they've got quite a lot of colors. Now, I am gonna do the rainbow color wash. That means I won't get to have all of those colors. So I'm gonna have less. Okay, are you ready? Let's bust open this charm pack and show you guys. All right, here's Hand Loom. I'm gonna try to keep them in kind of their order. Can you see that wonderful texture? In a shot cotton, one color of yarn goes this way and the other color of yarn goes this way, and it creates, I don't know, a depth of color, almost an iridescence. There's one that's got a lot of, it's two very different colors, so it looks different. If you are an upcycler, you may find cotton shirts that have this look to them. Those would absolutely be great here. So it might be worth a spin through your local Goodwill or something to look and see if you can find a woven fabric. You see the two colors in that one? This bundle, and I expect, whoops. So the charm pack and I expect the layer cake will be the same, is that they don't have repeats of colors, which is good. And the thing that I think that I can do is, like, when I get to blue-green, if I need to put a lot of this in one block, I can, and then if I want to put just a tad in another block. It's going to create some color continuity. Is that how you say that word? Some color continuance? Anyway, using one fabric in a couple of places, that'll help make it look cohesive. Gorgeous, gorgeous colors. Love it. I did think about, let's come to their, where's their white? Oh, it'll be, is it by the black? Do they have a white? This bundle may not have a white. I did think about, if they have a white, using it
for my sashing. I don't know, I think that's a silver. I'm not seeing a white in this one.
Besides shot cottons, I feel like chambres would go well with that. That is definitely something you could find if you were upcycling a men's shirt. These blocks are only 6.5 inches in scale. If I put my hand behind my 6.5 inch ruler, I'd probably have a medium-sized hand, and it's just kind of spread out. It's about that big. So you're not going to want a giant flower that when you cut it apart, you just lose any idea of what that is. Not that you couldn't use it, but just for scale, this is your size. You are going to need a 6.5 inch ruler so that when you trim these blocks up, once you're finally done making them, you're trimming them to your 6.5 inch size. In the book, there is a page that tells you kind of what supplies you need, basic supplies for sewing. Outside of that 6.5 inch ruler, if you don't have that, it's really nothing that special. Oh, I was going to say, while I was in my soapbox about scrap busting, if you are a beginner quilter and you're like, I don't have this many fabrics, how am I going to do that? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to find your sewing elder, probably a quilter, because they're going to tend to have strictly cottons, and you're going to say, I am doing a color wash quilt, and I'm new. I do not have a big collection or a stash of fabrics. Do you have any red that I could borrow? Because I promise you, if you go to your quilting elder's home and they start to pull out their stash, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I do organize my fabrics by color. I started a while back with a color wash quilt, and I realized that's how I needed to do it for it to make sense to me. And so when I have leftover fabrics, they're organized in links that are like from 1/2 yard to 2 yards. They have their own storage place. And then I have my fat quarters are stored in clear boxes like this. I like clear because then I don't lose or forget things. This is my blue storage bin. There are 3 ways that you can choose colors for this very colorful quilt that has 100 blocks in it. And one is monochromatic. We tend to think of monochromatic as being like black and white, but what if you chose blue as your color? And I just took my blue box and I sort of organized them light to dark, and you can see that there's a ton of variation here from light to dark, but that would be monochromatic. Maybe not that one, I don't know. That one might be more blue-green. Anyway, but you can see, I've got lots of bright, colorful things in here. I wouldn't necessarily use all these really colorful ones, but I could get pretty far on a blue quilt just using my stash of blues here. Tula Pink fabrics would of course be wonderful for this. And now that she has her gray work line out, here's my box of grays within one monochromatic palette. Just look, you could go gray to black and white. And I even pulled one in here that's a gray that has a pop of color and it's got a bit of blue. That would be really fun to do. You could just do the gray work quilt and do it all in those colors. I want you to find the color that makes your heart happy. 100 Modern Quilt Blocks by Tula Pink is dopamine quilting at its best. We're going to choose colors that make us happy, and we're going to have fun making these blocks. If what would make you really happy is to do these blocks improv and to not worry so much about the fussiness of the piecing, these would be great blocks to do as an improv project. The second way that you could choose colors for this quilt is to use a color wheel. If you wanted to go purple, pink, and then a pinky orange, you could. Or maybe you would like to do green, blue-green, and blue. That's a whole range of colors. If you pick 3 colors that are beside each other on the color wheel, any 3 that sit right beside each other, that would be a great thing for you to do. quilting. And it's made so that you can place your fabric underneath in these little holes, and then you choose a shade that's around it that is most like your fabric, and then it can help you decide what might go with that fabric. It's been a really handy tool to have.
The third way to lay out this quilt is a color wash. So there's a picture of her color wash quilt. Here it is photographed very flat, and then here is the grid of the layout. It does have sashing in between the pieces, and this is 100 blocks. And you can see that they go in a rainbow order.
Okay, and so I have to tell you my story now, because my son laughed really hard at me this week for this story. So years ago, we were in a city, and I feel like we were in a tea shop, and I was seeing a tea that had all these brightly colored bits in it, like little flower petals and stuff. There was a name on the tea, and I thought, oh, well, maybe that's like a local celebrity. Like it wasn't anybody I knew. And so then later I saw that name again. And so over time, I saw this name several times, and here's what I decided. This name was always associated with like rainbow of colors. And so I decided that this person must be an important person in the gay pride movement, because they have the symbolism of the rainbow. And I thought, I wonder who Roy G Biv is. I had seriously never heard this term in any art class, in like anywhere. I had never been taught Roy G Biv. So if you don't know, like me, here's what Roy G Biv stands for.
It is a color order. It is, do I have it right? Am I holding, oh, I'm holding my book upside down. That'll help. Red, orange, yellow, Roy, G for green, and Biv is blue, indigo, and violet.
So there you go. Now you can remember Roy G Biv, a person of great importance to help you remember color order. Anyway, Roy G Biv is not in fact a person. It is just the mnemonic to help you remember the order of the colors in the rainbow. So that's what I'm using to help me pull fabrics. I'm using a couple of through lines in my fabrics to keep them similar. I am using the shot cottons. I ordered my layer cake of hand loom fabrics from Austin's Sewing Machine and Quilting. I ordered it online. If you follow them on Facebook, they have a sale every third Saturday, and I made myself be patient and wait so I could get a little discount. Something that I liked about the Austin Sewing Machine and Stitching site is that they allowed me to order quarter yards. And I think that that will probably come as yardage and not as a fat quarter, but that's okay with me. I won't need, a fat quarter's width for this particular quilt. But what I like about that is it let me get a lot of colors without feeling like I was just totally breaking the bank to have quarter yards of a handful of different fabrics that I like. And what I did was I looked through, I had on hand already from Market a bundle of 2.5 inch squares. And so that let me see what colors they had and what colors I might be a little short on. There weren't many reds here. Really it goes pretty quick to pretty pinky. So if you love true reds, you might want to look for something else to augment that. So the shot cottons, the wovens, those are a through line for me. The quilts do have sashing in between the blocks. I think that helps to set off whatever color you've chosen. So you want to frame your blocks beautifully. And whether you use a light or a dark fabric, I think it helps to have that in mind before you begin or in the beginning of the process, because that may make a difference in some of the fabrics that you choose. And here's my example of that. If you have a blue-green block that you're doing, and you know that your sashing is black, then this fabric would make sense. If your sashing is white, this fabric might be your choice because it's got a white background as opposed to the black, as opposed to the black background. So I just think know whatever you're going to do to set it off. I've honestly never, I've done some vintage quilts with a white background, but I've never set off a new quilt that I've made with a white sashing. So this honestly feels really different for me to use white as my sashing because I've really never done that before. I've got another colorful quilt that I'm doing right now that the blocks are very bold and colorful, but I am going to do a dark navy, almost like a grunge that has like navy to purple in it. So it's not that white's what you have to do. That's just where I'm going to head. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to lay out a white sheet on the floor. I mean, use the floor, use the table, whatever. I just figure the floor because I've got 100 blocks to do. So I'm going to lay out something white because it's going to be the color of my background, my sashing. And then I'm going to start to lay out all of my colors. And I'm going to show you how, just kind of my process of pulling from my stash, what I chose and how I chose it. Remember that I'm going to have some through lines. I'm going to have a shot cotton fabric, and I'm going to try to get one of those in every block. I absolutely will not make it because this pack has, I don't know how many fabrics are they're going to be in their charm pack or their layer cake, but I don't think it's going to be 100, especially once I take out the things that aren't rainbow colored, the browns, the grays, the buffs, all of those kind of fabrics. If you are choosing rainbow color fabrics, think of the fabric version that is bright, something that seems really clean and clear as a color. Like it doesn't have to be the loudest purple ever, but you just want it to be a vivid version of whatever. Like if it's light lavender, you just want it to be clear. If you love all the cozy fabrics, like you love laundry basket quilts, you love Tula Pink, those all have an element of dustiness to them. And there's just a coziness there. Some people really love that kind of fabric. They won't be this bright, but I think that you still could do a color wash. I think it'll just depend on what you can find and what your stash is for what you can pull. But I would pick one of those lanes to be in. I would either pick dusty or I would pick bright. There are some blocks that have space enough for you to have a figure, a shape, an animal. And while I was organizing my blue box, I found this little print with all kinds of puppy dogs on it that are bright colored. These dogs are very close together, but I could fussy cut something. There will be some opportunities for that. So if you have a fun fabric that you're like, oh, that would be cute to put a little figure in there, you're gonna have a chance to do that. And that brings me to, Tula Pink fabrics. I had this fabric in my stash. I have a box of just Tula Pink fabrics. She has birds. If I had a pretty large blocks, maybe some of these smaller birds, I could get into some of the blocks in the 100 quilts, 100 modern quilt blocks. And because this is Tula patterns, I do want to mention that, of course, if you love Tula fabrics, go for it. Her true colors sets, I don't know, they're kind of her basics, her true colors. You can buy charm squares, you can buy layer cakes, that would be true colors. They're gonna be a good rainbow place for you to start. That would be your through line, just a package of her true colors. And that would get you started on your rainbow journey. And it's gonna give you something that is all the same. If you have charm packs, there are some pieces in the quilt that will be a 2.5 inch block, but I did see places where you needed 4 of them, like the corners of your block. And there's not that many. I don't have a count or anything. If you just have one set of charm squares, I think you could find a place to use it. But I think if I was ordering, I might order 2. And so that way, if something called, for 4 and I wanted to use this pre-cut, then you could. Okay. So I told you I already had the 2.5-inch set from Market. And so what I did was I found those colors, I laid them out, and then I went to my fat quarter boxes to see what would match, to see what would go, what might be cute with that color. And I'm not looking to perfectly match my color, because if we put all 3 of the colors in a block the same, that's gonna just read as one color. That's not interesting, that's not fun to look at. We're creating enough of a difference in our colors that it's interesting to look at. Somebody goes, oh, that's a fun block. I like that color. So let me show you one set of my colors that I've already pulled. I've laid out my white quilt on the floor, and then I've started with pulling the colors for greens. So there are 8 greens in this pack. If I'm following the G Biv color order, and I'm dividing that by 100 blocks, I will need to have approximately 14. There's a little bit of overage. You can have an extra of your favorite color or 2. But about 14 of every color. So you can see right off the bat, I don't have enough of just the hand loom, but that's why I'm going to add in some other colors. But so this is where I started. I'm using rainbow colors and I want them to be bright and clear. I feel like this one is very muted and this one is very dark. So I won't use those. So I pulled from hand loom, that's my through fabric. You can pull whatever yours is. And I laid out greens that I had. Then I grabbed my box of fat quarters and I looked at my yardage and I found some things that went with those colors. I noted that this one from hand loom is very, very dark. That might only be an accent piece, and I don't know for sure that I'll use it, but I did find a good batik that I thought, kind of goes better than that if I want something that's that color. In hand loom, there are a lot of these deeper colors. There is this one that's very gold colored, and there are a couple of great Tula Pinks that went with it really well. Something that I did was I went to my local fabric store with about 5 of these little squares in hand because I hadn't found anything that went really well with them. I was like, what can I put with that? And so I found a few things that went with them. And you'll see that there may be both a small print, a larger print that could be an accent piece or color. Some of them have other colors in them. I didn't find in hand loom a lime green, but I found one that I'd used in some other project that, again, I think that might be K Facet Pistachio. And there are quite a lot of lime greens in Tula Pink stuff. And so lime green would be a good addition. So for each color, if you're doing the color wash version, you're going to need about 14. Keeping the same fabric consistently woven in through my quilt gives it consistency. I would probably then get to choose from my solids one more green that I had, or maybe I just had a lot of a green that was just a favorite fabric. I would work to put that in there. So that's how I made my stacks of colors. And then now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start to put each little grouping with its, what I'm thinking of as its primary color. In the end block, it may not end up being the primary color at all. But what I'm thinking is doing is putting them together, stacking everything back up, and then I'm gonna lay it out in that quilt format. If you'd like to join in the 100-day block challenge, this is how my local sewing group is doing it. Excuse me,
I just put drops in my eyes. I think my eyes might be leaking. So the rules of our particular 100-day block challenge are that you have 100 days to sew your blocks. You can prep before then if you would like. So one of the ladies in my group who's also doing this book, she was using Ziploc baggies to store her blocks. And so she was cutting. She was so organized. She came into our local sewing group that we meet for several days in a row. And she just had the length of her table, but she just sat and she cut her pieces because these are very small pieces, lots of 1.5 inch things. The longest thing I saw was about 6.5 inch. And when I saw the 6.5 inch size blocks, that's when I knew I needed to get the layer cake so I could make a complete strip. Not that I couldn't piece together parts of a charm pack of a 5 inch block, but I didn't want to do that. So she was just cutting things out, numbering her Ziploc baggies 1 through 100 so that she had her pieces already cut. And then within that 100 days, when she had time to sew, she could start to sew her blocks. And so when I was thinking about kind of managing and organizing this project, I thought, yes, I think I want to go ahead and pre-cut. That makes sense to me to cut a lot all at one time and then put them in baggies. Even if I don't cut 100 blocks all at the same time, just to get some work done. I personally like to manage things in my head in terms of quilting, in terms of this is my day, I'm gonna prep my fabric, or this is my day, I'm gonna cut the fabric, this is the day, I'm gonna cut the binding, however you wanna do it. I kind of group it into chunks, whether that's a day, an afternoon, or I need a week to work on this part of the project. Maybe this month, my goal is to get to this point in my project, whatever that is. So I was trying to search for baggies that were labeled 1 through 100. I thought, what if somebody's already made that, like pre-numbered baggies? Like, let's see if that's a thing, and then I can share that with y'all. But something that came up was a teacher chart designed to help teach children the numbers 1 to 100. And so this was something that would go on a little teacher bulletin board, and it had little cards 1 through 100 and 100 pockets. And the kids would put the numbers, in the right order. And I thought, okay, this quilt has 100 blocks. What if we just laid our bags out as if it were a 100 number chart in rows of 10, and then we started to organize our fabric that way. So you've already seen my fabric grouped with my feature color that I want to have a block be, with underneath it what I might have on hand that could go in that block. And so what I'm looking for is a rainbow that just delights me, that I like the colors. I already know that I will, instead of having 14 reds, I might have a couple of reds, and then I will very quickly shift to pink, just because I like pink better. I also do not love a bold orange. That's just not in my coloring, a color that is flattering on me, like if I try to wear it in clothing, and it's not a color I really love. And so I will shift more toward salmon kind of orangey colors. I will go pinker oranges, I guess. So I'm going to shift it a little bit, but I'm gonna go ahead and do the layout that you saw in the book already. Let's flip to that page again. So I'm going to do this layout that is the Roy G Biv red, orange, yellow, green. I'm going to go ahead and lay out a little stack that's topped with my focus fabric. For me, that's my shot cotton, or maybe a solid. We'll see how all of that works, and we'll lay it out. For those of you who love small details up to the big picture, this process that I'm going to show you, don't let it overwhelm you, okay? Because what I'm actually doing here is starting really big picture. If you just want to make your blocks, and like if the book says this block is kind of blue, then you find a kind of blue for that day and you do that. I don't want to wig you out here. This is that I like to have a big picture plan. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and find my fabrics, lay them out, and get my Ziploc bags numbered across. I'll number them 1 through 10, then the next row 10 to 20, and so on.
And so I'll have my Ziploc bags already numbered with what goes in them. And then on my days to cut, you know, I can say, let's say it's number 62, my baggie with number 62 in it, I'll know what to do. All right, friends, questions, please put them in the comments. I would love for you to join me on this 100-day block challenge. Here's how I'm gonna do it for Happy Quilty people. My group in person is starting one of their start dates. They're doing 2 different start dates just to help people out with, I don't know, their timing of it. One of the start dates is July 23rd, 2026. I'm going to be starting on that day. For Happy Quilty people, I'm going to suggest that you start on August the 1st. That gives me a little bit of time to film ahead, and then I will post things accordingly on those days. So I will drop a bundle of videos that are, for example, all right, blocks 16 through 35 are all about doing some rectangles. So I may do a rectangle video. I might just say, this is blocks 16 through 20. I might break it up a little bit. But so my plan is not to overwhelm you, but just to do a top-down video of me sewing the blocks so you can see how it's done. So go ahead and get what you need, and that's just that 6.5-inch ruler, some fabrics, and remember that once you find your feature fabric, whether that's Tula Pink or shot cottons or just solids from your local craft store, whatever you want to use as kind of that through line that's helping you keep some consistency in the look of your quilt, whatever you're using, if you realize, oh, I do not have a thing that is this color, first off, you decide, do I even like this color? Do I want to put it in or use a different color? But if you do like this color and you want to put it in, then you just take this piece to your local little fabric store and you say, hey, what? And you would just hold it up, go walk around the colors in the store, and you find this color and add it to your little collection. A fat quarter will work nicely. I think charm packs will give you some fabrics to work with. It won't necessarily give you every fabric that you need to work with. That's why I have both the charm pack and the layer cake. Okay, so for the rest of the video, I'm just gonna carry on filming me putting out my 100 grids of my 100 stacks of fabrics. So you ready? We're gonna put this on fast forward so I can move through this really, really quickly. Here we go. So I'm using the book as my guide, and so far I found it really helpful to have a lot of charm squares because then I can start to lay out my 100 grid, and this is my just jumble of random squares that I'm going to use at least to help me place hold. I'm liking having the 5-inch squares just as a place to start. So see, I had a fabric here. I'll just pull that. I'm not ready to add fabrics. I'm just trying to get what will be my color layout down. I know that my 14 reds and pinks are going up here somewhere. Call violet. It's more fuchsia, and that's going to go with the purples at the other corner. All right, I'm starting to move into oranges right here. So I'm going to start with my favorite fabrics that I want to include. Just generally laying them out. Let's see, we get a little darker here as we down. It's really nice to have this chart to go by, and it's not that I think that I have to be exact. This one was miscut, it got folded under. It's not that I think that I have to be exact, but that's gonna give me a start. And then when I finish the quilt, I will, again, put everything up on my design wall and see how the quilt looks. But if I'm keeping everything in numerical order, I should be pretty close. Like I shouldn't have to do, I shouldn't have to do very much shifting around if I've kept it in numerical order. Okay, so now I'm kind of looking for oranges. I'm looking again. I've got some both solid and blenders. And remember that I wanted to go very, what's kind of that color, isn't it? I wanted to go very peachy and salmon instead of orange. Now, ooh. It's very bright. Quite a bit of time has elapsed. I have generally preferred, if I can find a charm square that's kind of a placeholder for a color, using that. I've got my 100 kind of gridded layout going. My next step will be to add my fabrics in. For example, I've got all my violets kind of gathered up, and they're gonna go over here in this corner in the bottom. And I'll try to pair some that look good. For example, that one would be a good blender, somewhere where I'm trying to meet up violet and purple. So then I'll start to stack up. My greens I had already done on camera, and so I have the greens already kind of stacked up. That looks a lot messier than just this. It's kind of a lot. If you don't want to lay it out like this, the easier way to do it is to just pick the 14 colors at a time, and then maybe you kind of cut those 14 all at once. This is certainly not a requirement at all. This is just to help me feel better as I start jumping into this quilt, that there's kind of a direction I'm headed. I don't know, I guess I just need to see, like, is it all gonna work out? Do I have these colors? Is it gonna make sense? I don't even have my quilt really organized the way she does. It occurred to me as I was laying this out that if I flipped where my violet and my purple are, I could really sort of have a warm half to a cool half. So if you wanted to think in terms of laying it out like warm to cool, you could do that out as well. Where hers is very diagonal, mine doesn't look diagonal right this minute, but I can certainly shuffle some things around to make it be more diagonal. All right, well, this is where I'm gonna stop for tonight. The next task will be adding in my fabrics, making little stacks of what I think is gonna work. And I'm trying to remember that 5 is about the max fabrics that I think might work together. Then they're all gonna go in a Ziploc bag together. I guess after fabrics, I'll number my Ziploc bags 1 to 100, and then I'll start to stuff them all in. I'll put them all in a bin once they're labeled. And then when I get ready to cut, I think that I will just like look through and like find my pinks and try to cut all the pinks. That way, if I have like, say, I don't know, one of these pinks over here needed to go in with one of those, I can kind of play with it a little bit. I don't know, that might be easier to see. Just cut them one at a time and then shuffle the fabrics if I really need to. Okay. This is a lot, but it's really been super fun playing with these fabrics, seeing what I've got, seeing where I can go. And
with a couple of charm packs, really probably 3 major ones plus a few random pieces that I had here and there, I've really gotten really far on this. You can see down here in my purples, I have some fabrics laying there instead of charm squares, but I really got pretty close to doing the whole thing. So there we have it, friends.